Okay. So we'll go back over block attributes, how to create those. I want to talk about the title block assignment, how to draw the title block assignment, and how to do that. And there is one other thing with regards to blocks that I want to talk about. And then I will post a video for hatching, and I'll let you review that for next week. Any questions on the idea of an attribute before we get going at all? It is, yes. It's called block edit, block_edit. Yes. Okay. So the idea behind an attribute, like I said last time, is that you can attach information to a block, right? And then you can take that information from the block and extract it out and use it to create schedules of information in your drawings. Now, we're going to learn how to do that. We have learned how to do that, although we won't get as advanced as learning how to actually extract that information out. That's going to be in something like Jeff's advanced, CAD customization class where you learn that. So we won't learn that here, but attributes are still actually very useful, even if you aren't using them to fully extract all the information out, right? And I say that because in every set of drawings, you still have to number and tag every door and every window, right? So attributes are helpful even in just that aspect, right? So even just for numbering and lettering doors and windows, right? That makes it really helpful. I'm gonna go through the process of creating a block, adding some attributes, right? We'll do that all over again. And we'll draw the title block. What I'd like to do with this is I'd like to start from the very beginning with a block. I'm going to draw it from the very beginning, show you how to add the attributes, how to activate the attributes, okay? And then again, we'll draw the title block. These blocks right here, just to illustrate, right, and this is a block. I know it's a block because when I click on it, right, I've got my icon here. I get a couple additional grips. I have one grip here, but I get a couple of additional grips on the text for the attribute, right? But that doesn't mean it's not a block, right? This is all glued together. It's all one piece. It's one block. And the same thing here with this window. This is a block, okay? Your assignment there's this assignment obviously, but we have another assignment having to do with blocks and attributes. And I think it's called door, window, furniture, something like that. Door, window, furniture right here. Let me open that up. You'll have to do this assignment as well, and so what we're going to be doing right now is going to help you with that. So essentially the idea behind this assignment will be to draw these doors, right? Add the little annotation marker, add the attributes, right? And you have several different blocks you're going to have to do that with. So there's going to be more things you'll have to do than what we're doing in class, but I think you'll get the general idea. All right. So let's start from the beginning, right? I'm going to go back to home. And something I want to remind you about is we draw blocks on layer 0. So whenever you start drawing a block, right, you want to ideally start drawing it on layer 0. And that will mean coming up here to our layer dialog box and choosing layer 0. Now, if you forget to do that, you can always draw the block and then go back and change the layers, right? I'm going to click on line, and I'm going to draw my first door. Okay, so I click, move in the direction I want to go. I'm going to turn my ortho on by pressing F8. I'm going to type 36 for 36 inches, enter. Okay, so I'm drawing my panel for my door. And we'll make the door panel, 1 inch, enter. 36, enter, and then I finish up that door panel. Okay. Now it's time for me to draw the swing of that door. I like to use circle. We all know that, right? So I click, I draw my circle. I click to the center here to initiate the center of the circle. I just drew it out to the end of that panel, knowing that that's 36 inches. This is kind of the long way about, but I draw a line there and I trim. TR, enter, enter, and I trim off the pieces I don't need, escape, escape, click, delete, and I've got my door drawn. Okay, so that's how I would draw my first door. And I know that we're going to have a little tag marker here for the door, right? The little circle. And so me and you, hopefully, will get this way. I like to draw a little bit of geometry so that I can place my door marker nicely where I want it to go, right? So I drew this line here, thinking, oh, maybe I'll center my little circle here on the center of that line that I drew. So I'm going to click and create another circle. The circle is going to house my tag, the number, right? And we'll maybe make this, oop, that's a little small. I did 3. Maybe I should do 4 inches. Delete that, do another circle. Let's do 4 inches. That looks pretty good. Okay, and I delete that. So I know that that circle is centered from this point to that point, right? Kind of nice. Okay, so I've got my first door here, right? Now, I could continue on and create my attributes right now, which would make sense, right? But I know ahead of time that attributes can be copied. I know that, right? I know that I'm gonna have to create another door that looks like this, but it's opposite, right? And I know that I'm gonna have to create another door down here that's a mirrored door. And I know that these are all identical other than, you know, this one being a double door and this one being opposite of this door, right? And I know that I can create the attributes here and then copy them from there to there to there, right? So in my mind, I'm thinking I'm just going to draw all the other geometry first and then create my attributes on one block, and then I'm going to copy them around. Okay, so I'm going to CO, or no, I'm not going to CO. I'm going to mirror. Mirror, enter. I select my object, I hit enter, click. I have my ortho on so that I get a straight mirror, click, click, enter, and I have my door that's the opposite swing, right? So pretty easy. I've got my right hand door here. Okay. And now I know that I have to create a double door, right? So I can grab either one of these, CO, copy, bring it down, and I'm going to MI mirror it right at where the swing ends. Click, click, enter, and it mirrors that door, right? So immediately I really only had to draw one instance of that door, and I was able to mirror it here, copy it down, mirror it over again, and I have all 3 instances of the doors that I need to generate for that assignment, right? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, I'm going to create some attributes, right? And the assignment has, I'm not going to create all the attributes that the assignment has you create, but the instructions are kind of extensive up here, right? So it says add the following attributes to each symbol. For the doors, add the door number and the door size. For the windows, add the window letter and the window size. Okay, so let's add our attributes here. I'm going to come up to annotate, or no, I'm not. I'm going to go to insert, and I'm going to go to define attributes. And I'm going to define my attributes for this first door. So do I want it to be invisible, meaning do I not want to see it here, but I want it attached? Well, for the door number, no. I want to be able to view it. So I'm going to leave all of these unchecked, okay? And I'm going to click on locked position just so that the number stays where it's at. The tag for the door will be door number. Right? The tag will be the representation I see on the block before I create the block, and it can't have any spaces in it. The prompt, door number. When the attribute is activated, the prompt pops up and says, hey, what door number? And you type in the door number. The default can just be, it just is a placeholder for you to type in. The text is going to be the text for that tag, right? And I want it to be middle center, the justification, so it sits right in the center of that little circle that I've created. Yep. I came up to insert, and then I went to define attributes. Yep. So I want this one to be middle center. And then my text height, this is probably, unless you get into dynamic blocks, right? This is going to be one instance where I'm actually not going to make my text annotative, right? I'm going to keep it a specific height, and the height is going to be kind of proportional to the size of this door, which is then proportional to the size of that tag. Okay, so this is one instance where the text is not going to be annotative, but I am able to, you know, specify a text style, and the text height is going to be maybe something like 4 inches. Okay, now when I hit OK, I'm going to be bumped out of this definition box. Click. I'm going to click at the center of that door tag circle, click, and it places my attribute. Okay. Now, the block is still undefined. The attribute, I've defined the attribute, but I haven't really activated it. Okay. The attribute is activated once I create this block. So in the block definition, this is created or activated. It's probably because when you defined your attribute, you didn't change the height right here.
I did.
You did? What size is it?
4 inches. Well, I typed in 4 inches.
Let's see. Hit click. Just click. Now double click on that. Click. Escape. Click. Oh, we might have to redefine it. Go back to insert. And I'll let you know.
I just typed in.
Oh, yep, that's fine. Yeah. Fine. Let's see, it might have to do, no, that's good. Just hit type some stuff in and let's look at it and see what it does. It doesn't have to do anything. Let's see. Arch 4 inches. Little center, okay. I wonder if you typed in 4 feet on accident. Zoom into your door now. You see it looks.
Oh, there you go.
Something. So if you click now on your door in the center of that door circle, there you go. That's good.
Did you do yours when you went from the bottom?
Oh, it'll orient itself once you click.
Oh, I see.
Yep. There you go. All right.
Excuse me. Can you just show me how to trim the circle? Totally messed up.
TR, enter. There you go. Oh. TR, enter. Okay, click again. I think it's maybe because, let me see this one. It's when you drew your circle, these aren't touching, you see that?
Okay.
And so it's not engaging it, and so it won't trim it. So you click here, go from there, and you're going to snap to there. Oh. There we go. And now when you TR, enter.
Ah, okay.
There you go.
Sweet.
Okay. All right, so we have that first attribute defined. Everything looks really good, right? We want to define a second attribute associated with this. And so our assignment says door number and door size. Okay, so this second attribute will be invisible. We want the information contained in this door block, but we don't want to see it, right? We just want to see the door number. So I'm going to click on invisible for this instance right here, okay? And I'm going to click on my tag is going to be door size. My prompt will be door size, and a default will just be like a dash. Now in our second attribute, we don't have to define the text because AutoCAD is pretty smart, and it knows that likely you're going to want to see the same justification and text size as the first attribute, right? So I'm going to click on Align Below Previous. I'm going to hit OK, and there you go. Oh, did you have a question?
I just need help.
Oh, well. He's like, no. Okay, so I have my door number, I have my door size, and I have my block here. So it looks pretty good. Now, so I've defined these two attributes. I haven't activated them yet, and I'll activate them when I create the block. But what's nice now is that I don't have to generate them again, right? If I'm using the identical set of attributes on this door, right, then I can just copy these over to that door. When I create the block, they activate, okay? They're pretty generic in that sense, right? I can copy them around. So I can CO, copy, select the objects, hit enter, grab the center point of that circle, click, and then I can click there, and I can click here, and I just copied my attributes about, okay? So now I have defined, you know, the door number and the door size into each of these different door blocks, okay? Now to activate the attribute, I'm going to make these each a block. So I'm going to come up here to create block, and I won't be lazy today. I'll create an actual W block, right block, and I want to choose a pick point, click. My pick point is going to be selected on the object in a place where it will help me place the object. Click. I want to select objects. Click. I'm going to select my door. Now, I can just randomly grab all of my attributes. Not a big deal, okay? And it's not even that it will affect how my attributes look. If I just randomly select my attributes all in one fell swoop, when they pop up on the screen when they're activated, they may not appear, they may not be asked for information in the same order that they show in the door, right? So if I just go like this and select them, right, it may ask me for the door size first and the number second, even though the door number will still show in my block, okay? But if I click once, click, click, click twice, then these will be asked in sequence, this one first and this one second, okay? Okay. So I've got my object selected, I'm done selecting. I have to tell AutoCAD I'm done selecting. So I hit enter. And I browse out to wherever I want these to be saved. So I click on this ellipsis here. I'm going to go to my desktop, and I've got my AutoCAD. Oh, I thought I had a block library somewhere. W block library. These are going to be doors. I'm going to call this one A-door-36 inches, and I like to do a little ATT next to it just so that I know there is a defined attribute there, okay? I hit save, and I hit OK. Now by doing that, immediately I'm asked, hey, would you like to input these attributes, right? So the attributes have been activated, and the door number, which was my prompt, right? I can type in something like 5. The door size, I can type in something like 3 foot 0 inches by 6 foot 8 inches. Okay, and I can hit OK. So now that door block has number 5 associated with it, and it has an invisible attribute associated with it also, right? That is the door size. So later on in the process, when you need to create a door schedule, instead of typing out all the information, you can extract it from these blocks and it will populate a schedule, okay? I'm gonna have to do the same thing. I'm gonna have to re-block this door. So I'm gonna click on right block, pick point, click, select the objects, right? Click, click, got that little guy, enter. We're going to save this one as the same thing. This one's going to be a I'm going to type it RHD, right hand door, save. Okay, so this will be door number 6, and the door size can be 3 foot 6 inches by 4 foot 0 inches. Okay, and then the third one, we'll just do it quickly, right? I'm going to click on pick point again. Oh, and I don't need this circle, so I'm going to hit escape. I don't need that circle there, so I'm going to delete it. WB, W block, pick point, click, select objects. Right, I'm coming in here. I'm grabbing everything really except for those attributes because I want to click once, click a second time, hit enter, hit OK. This will be door number 8. And whatever size, I'm not going to enter the size, I'm just going to hit OK. So now I have 1, 2, 3 different blocks that have built-in attributes, right? And really, I only drew one block and I only defined one set of attributes, and I mirrored this one, I mirrored this one, and then I copied the attributes around, right? Now, if I wanted to, and in the assignment you'll have to do this, you'll have to explode these blocks, right, to show that that you've actually generated these attributes. I can type X, enter, select the block, hit enter, and it explodes it back into its component parts, including the attribute definition. Okay? Make sense so far? Yep.
So when I tried to do the door size,
Mm-hmm.
it just popped out the number below instead of disappearing.
You didn't click invisible then.
Oh, there's no invisible on that one.
What's that?
It needs to be invisible on that one.
Yeah, on the door size. Yeah, so when you create, and then that's really easy to do, but if you don't check invisible, it will pop that in there and it will show it below it. Yeah, yep. Okay, and another thing I want to remind you about is that because I saved these as W blocks, yep.
Yeah, attributes when it doesn't pop up for me at all.
The what? Sorry?
Edit attributes and you write a block and then you edit attributes.
Yeah, I,
Yep. Hold on.
I know I got it. So you write a block.
Oh, okay. So what was happening with yours is, do that again. So you see how you're retain right there? That means that you did create a block, but it didn't create it within your drawing. So it just saved it out to a different file. So if you click convert to block, okay. Now can you do it? So I think you're having the same problem. So you just have to click convert to block. Yep, yep. Okay. All right. Let's see. You are 2, 3, 4. Is that you, Ben?
No.
Is that you?
That was me.
That was you?
Yeah.
That's you? Okay. Okay. All right. So one problem that I just saw was when creating these blocks, like W block, right? If you don't have this change to convert to block and you have it retain, your block will still be generated when you block it, but it won't turn that instance into a block, right? So your attributes won't activate, but that block will still be generated, right? So I'm going to go back to my desktop here, and I'm going to go to WBlock library, door, and there are my 2 doors with attributes associated with them. Okay. So you can add attributes to anything, right? It's not specific to doors or windows. You can add it to furniture, and that will be part of your assignment to create these doors, to draw these windows, and this is a polygon, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a hexagon, right? Hexagon. To draw a little hexagon right there and to put your attribute into that hexagon. And then you're going to create some furniture. So you're going to draw this furniture and you're going to make these into blocks and add the attributes that are appropriate for them. Okay. All right. So what happens when I need to edit these things, right? What if I need to change this from number 6 to number 1, right? I can click really fast on that attribute and the attribute editor pops up. And if I click on door number, right, I can change that to something like 1. If I click on door size, I can change the size of it if I want. Not only can I change the values of these, but if I go to like text options, I can change the text options. And I would say that 99% of the time you don't really need to change like the height or the justification. The main thing that you're going to end up changing here will be the rotation, right? And I say that because, you know, for example, if I'm using this door and I'm using it, that's weird, what is that? Oh, I thought that was part of my door. And if I'm using it like right here, right? And I look at it and I think that the block looks good, the attribute is working, right? But, ooh, something's off. Ooh. Let's get that fixed. Doesn't seem to want to. We'll pull that out and we'll pull this out a little bit. Huh. We'll go around it. Oop. There we go. I think this, if I remember right, this drawing might have a little bit of weirdness happening with the geometry. Yeah, I think it's, anyway. Okay, so if I want to use a door like this, right, you look at that and it's sideways. And that's not very useful when you can't read it, right? So click. I want to change that, the orientation of that text. I'm going to go to text options, and the rotation, instead of being 270, I want to change it to 0, and I hit OK, and it rotates that text. Okay, so super helpful, right? We may, even just being beginning AutoCAD users, we may not use the attributes to their full extent, right? But they are going to be very helpful for you when you're just even tagging things, right? Because I can attach my text and annotation to that actual object, okay? So I can double click on, you know, one of my attributes and I can change the text. What happens when I want to change maybe the actual geometry of the block, right? Like maybe I made a mistake in this block and I need to add something to it. I made a dimensional error. There's something weird with it that isn't functioning, right? And I want to change the block. When I have an attribute associated with it, I have to go a little bit different route than I normally would. But if I don't have an attribute associated with a block, I can double click on it and it bumps me into a block editor. Let me just say that. If I do have an attribute associated with this block, I can click on the block, I can right click, and I can choose block editor or edit block in place. Okay, so block editor, if I click on block editor, I'm bumped into a separate screen. And this separate screen will allow me to add or remove geometry from my block, okay? And if I change this block here, when I hit save, any change to this one specific block will then filter back into my drawing and change every instance of that block with the same name, okay? So if I come in here and I, for example, you know, just so that we can see the change, I add another circle right there, right? And I think, okay, that looks good. Okay, I've edited my block, meaning I've drawn new geometry here. I hit close block editor, click, save the changes, click, right? That block, if I had it anywhere else, every block with that same name would have that change made to it. Okay, oh, and I think I have it down there. Yep, so there it is. So both of those blocks with that same name have been changed. What was that? Yep. Okay. So I want to edit it again, right? So I can click on this block, I can right click, and I can click on block editor. Block editor bumps me into a new screen to edit the block. And you can do that with any block, okay? Another way of editing blocks, same thing, right? But just a different view would be to edit the block in place. If I click on edit block in place, and I hit OK here, it still bumps me into an editing mode for that block, but it allows me to use the context of the drawing around this block to change the block geometry, right? And in general, usually if I'm changing a block, it's to fit the needs of where it's going, right? Like I need a narrower door or something is happening with the shell of the architecture that makes it so that I have to edit according to its surroundings. So editing in place is pretty helpful because, you know, I could say, well, this is not a good instance anyway, but if this doorway were wider, right? And every doorway with this door in it were wider, Then I could grab this and I could change this, make it wider, right? Come over here and hit Save Changes, hit OK, and it saved those changes, right? And then I could maybe stretch this back and then it would suit my need. It's kind of an odd door now, right? It doesn't even look like a door. But it changed every instance of that block, right?
If you were to just press like undo, would that go directly to that?
You mean if you did it and you didn't like it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I don't like that change, I could hit undo and I could get out of that. Yep. Okay. I don't, funny enough, oh, we have 90 minutes. Funny enough, I don't a lot of times edit blocks unless there's a very blaring error, but normally if I have to change a block to suit the environment around it, I will a lot of times just explode this instance of my block and generate a new block. And I do that because I'll probably use that block elsewhere, right? It's just as much effort to explode the block and create a new one as maybe to go into the block editor and edit a block. So you'll see me a lot of times just exploding and creating new blocks instead of editing them a lot of times. Okay. In fact, that's bothering me, right? We'll click. Oh, no. Sorry, with the attribute, you do have to go to click and right click and go to block editor. Delete, close block editor, save. There you go. Okay. So we have our blocks, we have our attributes associated with our blocks, right? I want to, again, just impress upon you that blocks and attributes are not only they're not just associated with like a door, right? And a specific architectural element. You can attach them to anything, right? Anything that needs inherent information associated with it. So doors, windows, furniture, and even annotation, which is what we're going to do next, okay? One of your next assignments will be to create a title block, right? And title blocks have information contained in them that it would be helpful to use attributes to generate this information, right? So the idea behind this title block is that I draw it, and we'll talk about what its use is in a minute. I'm going to draw it, and then I'm going to add attributes for name, class or school name, class, drawing name, scale, and date, so that instead of coming in and adding text to every one of these places, I can just double click on it and I can type in the information and it's inherent in that block. Okay. Title blocks, let me just talk about the idea of a title block for a minute. A title block, and you'll see it on all of these drawings over here, right? So if you look at any set of architectural drawings, you have a title block that somewhat surrounds every single set of drawings, right? So it goes all the way around every single page, okay? And the idea behind the title block is that it contains information about the project, really, right? So you're going to see things like, in fact, let me pull up, let's Google title block. There's a good looking one right there. Okay. Okay, so title block will have, it'll have a logo on it or something, right, for the design firm. You'll have the name of the design firm, the contact information for the designer, right, the client's name, the project's name, any revisions that need to be done to the project. You have contact information, addresses, other, things for the city. You have the name of the sheet that's contained in the title block, and then the sheet number or the sheet designation, right, A101. So there's just a lot of information contained in the title block, and it's generally going to be about the project, okay? So we're creating a title block for the same reasons. And of course we're doing, assignments academically, but you still need your name on the assignment. You still need what assignment it is. You still need, inherent information on your assignments. And so we'll be creating a title block for that purpose, okay? Let me find where that was. So our title block, we don't really have a specific project or professional organization, I guess, but we do put our name on it. This is an AutoCAD class. We do go to SLCC. The drawing name could be floor plan or whatever, right? The scale of the drawing is important, and the date that it was created. Okay. This will be important. We'll put title blocks on a lot of our assignments from now on. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to draw them, and then I'm going to show you how to use them. Okay. And these will for sure be used on your final. So it's pretty important to draw them correctly for this assignment so that you can then use these title blocks for your final project. Okay. We're going to create 4 different title block sizes. We're going to create 2 title blocks that are 8.5 by 11, so letter size. One's going to be portrait and one's going to be landscape. And then we're going to create an 11 by 17 title block. One's going to be landscape and one's going to be portrait. Okay. Title blocks. Let's see here. Ooh, thank you. Title blocks, when they're used in AutoCAD, they are created as a block. Okay, so we're going to draw the geometry, we're going to add the attributes, and then we're going to block it. Okay, this is one of those special blocks where you likely, if you have a template file that you have started and you've been using, if you create this as a regular block, a BLOCK, in your template file, it will always be there in every brand new project you create from your template file, right? You'll have this in there to use. So this is one of those things that is really helpful to have in your template file, okay? If you haven't been keeping up on your template file, this would be useful as a W block. So you'll go put it in your block library, and then whenever you need to use it, you'll go and find it in your block library and bring it into your drawings, okay? The way that we're going to use this title block is we are going to bring it into paper space, okay? We're going to place it on our piece of paper, and that's how we're going to use it, right? So let's draw it first, and then I'll talk about how to put it in paper space. All right. Essentially, a title block, just like these architectural drawings right here, this title block needs to fit on the piece of paper that it's going on, essentially, right? So if this is going to be an 11 by 17 inch title block, right? And I look at my page here, let me see what size this is. I'm going to do Adobe and 11 by 17, 1:1, LaserJet. We'll do landscape, and let's do portrait. Apply to layout, cancel. Okay, so here's my title block, my 11 by 17 inch piece of paper, okay? I want you to notice, and we've talked about this before, but we have this dashed line that kind of goes around the border of this piece of paper, and it's a margin, essentially, right? And so you don't really want to be drawing anything outside of that margin because it will, number one, likely get cut off, but number two, it will shift your drawing on the page, right, so that your drawing will fit. So I'm just going to quickly measure this. I think they're about a 1/2 inch. Oh no, it's even smaller. It's about 1/8 of an inch, right? So about 1/4 of an inch, you know, between the two sides, 1/8 and 1/8, right? So the 11 by 17 inch title block is actually going to, for sure, need to be 1/4 of an inch smaller, right, than this page. But I think to be safe and to accommodate other printers, you'll probably want to make it at least a 1/2 inch smaller, okay? So your 11 by 17 is actually going to be 10.5 by 16.5, all right? So I'm going to make sure I'm on layer 0 because I am going to draw a block, L for line, and I want this to be 16.5 by 10.5. Okay, so DIST distance, I'm just going to measure it and make sure. So that is 10.5, and that one is 16.5. Okay. So again, I'm just drawing a block like I normally would, right? And the way that our title block is going to look, and I'm guessing on these, let me just say this, I'm guessing on these. You can print this out. Okay, so there is one title block here on this piece of paper. If you print it out, then you can use a ruler and you can measure how big some of these things are, right? But there's going to be some spacing, like how long is that spacing? I'm going to guess today, but you guys will try and make it more accurate, okay? All right, so I've got my page size, right, number 1. I've got this border that goes around the edge, okay? I have this piece that arcs up, and this is, you know, parallel to this, goes over, and it arcs back down. And then I have, you know, these division lines, and then I have these lines that go across here, and then I have my attributes. Okay. I'm gonna try and keep this on the screen a little bit. There we go, as I draw. Okay, so I'm gonna guess that this is maybe like an inch and a half. We'll do an inch and a half here. I'm gonna use the offset command to offset this bottom an inch and a half. That looks too big. It's probably an inch, right? Offset 1 inch. There we go. Looks better. Okay, I know that I have to have a vertical division here, another one there, right? This one appears as if it's like maybe an inch and a half. Oh, maybe a little bit more, maybe like 2 inches, right? So I'm just guessing. Okay, that looks fine. And then I don't know how long this is, so I'm going to kind of work backwards. I bet this is an inch and a half and that's an inch and a half. So we'll do that. Offset, an inch and a half, an inch and a half. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, trim, TR, enter, enter. And I'm going to trim those pieces off. Okay. Now the trick is, hey, I've got this arc right here that needs to be generated, but I don't know what it is. You know, I could use the arc tool to generate that, but I think what might be easier is the fillet command here. When I use the fillet command, though, something's going to happen, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to type F for fillet, enter, radius. And if you remember, fillet will allow you to trim two objects together with an arced corner. So my radius, let's do something like 1/4 of an inch. Maybe a little too small, maybe a 1/2 inch. F for fillet, enter. R for radius, enter. 1/2 inch. Probably a little more than that even, huh? F for fillet, R for radius, 3/4 of an inch. Maybe even more, maybe an inch. There we go, that looks pretty good. But what happened in doing that is AutoCAD trimmed and that piece disappeared. But you know what? It's okay. L for line. I'm just gonna draw that line back in, right? Replace it because the fillet was worth it, right? Okay, I have to do the same thing over here. F for fillet. And it remembered the 1 inch radius. Enter. Click, click. And I'm gonna have to do the same thing over here. L for line. I'm going to draw that line up. Okay, so I've got somewhat the framework for this. I now need to draw a line all the way across there. L for line. And again, this is a block, so it's going to be a block, I guess I should say. So I'm going to remember to draw on layer 0. If I didn't draw on layer 0, right, I'm going to change it. L for line. And I can't quite get it to hit that, so I'm going to TR, enter, enter, trim, trim. Okay. Oh, one more. TR, enter, enter, click. Okay. Now here's the thing. We did that was pretty easy to draw, right? Not too bad. I now need to create the attributes. The attributes won't be too bad to create. Although I'm thinking ahead, right? I'm thinking this is middle centered here. This is middle centered. This is middle centered, right? These are all pretty middle centered within their little spaces. And in AutoCAD, I don't really know where the middle center of this space is, okay? So I'm gonna draw some geometry in here. that I can place my attribute onto, because I can place an attribute to the middle of that line, right? And then when I'm done creating my attributes, I'm going to delete them, right? In AutoCAD, which is somewhat different than Revit, you constantly are generating more geometry than you need to then delete it out, right? So I use this to place something and I delete it out, right? But in AutoCAD, geometry is free, so I can just create as much as I need and then get rid of it.
Can you just show one more time how you use the fillet or the
Yeah,
bottom?
yeah. Okay. F for fillet, enter. And now it says select your first object, right? I would click and click, or specify the radius of that fillet you want to generate. So I could click on radius, or I could type R, enter, and I would type in the radius. I'm going to type in 1 inch. 1, enter, and then I click once. I click the second object that I want to fillet, and it's done. And if the radius isn't quite right, you could go back and you could specify a different radius and do it again.
The height of that bottom section.
The whole thing, I think, let's see. We did it 1 inch. Okay. So now it's time for me to create my attributes. You're going to put your name here. Okay, this will likely be a constant attribute because your name shouldn't change, right? So that could be a constant attribute. So could Salt Lake Community College, a constant attribute. The name of the school won't change. The class won't change, right? So these 3 can be constant attributes. And then these 3 will be, they will not be constant, okay? So let's add these attributes in here. I'm going to go to Insert, Define Attribute. The first one will be not, it will be visible, so we're going to uncheck that. It will be constant, meaning it's just going to be my name, right? And so the tag here will be name, but the default value, which will be the constant value, will be my name, right? So the justification, right? We're going to do middle center again. And then this is one of those cases where we're not getting into dynamic blocks. So we're going to choose just a standard value for this, which are probably going to be like, so this is 1 inch. So half of it is a 1/2 inch, just under a 1/2 inch. Maybe 1/4 of an inch will do. Let's do 1/4 of an inch. Alt text. Okay. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to click on name. And there it is. I might need to adjust this. It seems like it might be a tiny bit short, so maybe I need to adjust it now. I'm going to stretch this a little bit. I'm going to do it by like a 1/2 inch. Grab that, click on the center grip and move it to the middle there. Okay, so I have my name. I'm going to do the community college. So I'm going to define another attribute. It's going to be constant again. So the tag will be school name. The default value will be, I'm just going to do SLCC. The justification will be middle center again. 1/4 of an inch tall. That text height looks pretty good. So I'm going to hit OK again. Click school name. The bottom, the one underneath here will be Arch 1310. That's going to be constant. So define attribute. Constant again. This will be course name. The default value will be 1310. I don't know our section. Oh, Arch 1310. So middle center. Okay. Click, there you go. So we have, and these are different fonts, right? If you want to do different fonts, you can. It's fine, but. Okay, drawing name. The drawing name will flux, right? It might be floor plan on one, it might be elevation on another, whatever, right? So this is not going to be a constant attribute. So I'm going to click on define attribute, and I'm going to uncheck constant. This one will be called drawing. drawing name, and we'll just have a dash for a default. We'll have middle center. Okay, click, there's our drawing. Right, so we're just doing these over and over again. The scale will be the same thing, define attribute. And you can tab, so if I'm here, I can tab and it goes to the next one, tab and it goes to the next one. This will be middle center. And this one's scale. Oh, I don't have my little lines. L for line. I should have drawn these in there before, right? I have to redefine that attribute. So scale. This one I'm looking at it and I'm thinking that text is likely going to have to be smaller than that text. So I might make it an 1/8 inch tall. Oh, what did I do? See, it doesn't always work out, right? So scale, middle center, right? There we go. Okay. One more will be the date. And if these don't work out, if one doesn't work out, if it's too big or too small, just delete it and do a new one, right? So this tag will be the date, and left, or let's see, middle center again, arch, 1/8 inch, okay, click. All right, so it looks pretty good, right? The size is pretty good. Now, in order for these attributes to be activated and turned into a block, I'm going to have to W block this entire title block, okay? Now let me say this, you're going to have to do this 4 times because you have this first one that is a portrait size 11 by 17, and you're going to have a landscape 11 by 17, right? So really it's not going to be too difficult. You will take this one and you'll copy it over and rotate it and make a second one, a second block, right? Then you'll have another size. So you'll have the 8.5 by 11, which you'll have to draw and do all this in as well. All right. So now I'm going to right block this. We're gonna have a pick point here. We'll choose this bottom corner, click, select my objects, right? We're all pros at this now, enter. And we're gonna name this one, we'll call this title block. It'll be 11 by 17 portrait. Save, okay. And now what is my drawing name? Well, maybe this is a section. And the scale, maybe 1/8 of an inch is equal to 1 foot 0 inches. And the date, the 28th of March 2018. Now you notice it only asked me for these last 3 because these first few are constant. So it just enters that constant value. I hit OK and that information is filled in. Okay. Oh, great. You know, I wasn't thinking about it. I should not have left those measuring, you know, the annotation in there. So I'm going to click on this block. I'm going to right click. I'm going to hit block editor. Ooh. Whatever that was. And I'm going to delete these out. No, I drew this one at 11 by 17. Yeah. Oh yeah, I was just copying the information. So close block editor, save it, and looks pretty good. Okay. So now, how do I use, well, first thing, okay, let me say this. First thing, when I create a block in this drawing and I hit block editor, right, I make changes to the block. That is only going to make changes to the block in this drawing, right? By changing this block, exploding this block, editing it within this drawing, I still have that W-blocked external file that is saved out of my block library. So the changes I make within my file, they don't save back to my original drawing, okay? And that's kind of wouldn't be a problem with every block, but in this case it kind of is, because those elements that I deleted out don't ever need to be there, right? So if in actuality, if I wanted to edit my title block, I'm going to open up the block library file. Click, click. And you see how those lines are still there? I'm going to delete those out. So in this case, it's the difference between, in this drawing, delete, I'm going to hit save. I'm going to close out of it. In this case, within the file I'm working in, I edited the block, made the change. It updated any copy within that drawing file. But that doesn't save back to the master block file. So in order to change my master block file, I had to open that file in my W block library and change it. Okay. All right. So now how do we use these title blocks? I'm going to delete that one out of my model space, right? I just generated my block. I'm going to delete it out of my model space. And how do I use these? Okay. Title blocks, I'm going to say 99% of the time, because there is a way to use them in model space, but it's it's not used very often. It's just not great to do it that way. But I would say 99% of the time you're going to insert them into paper space. Okay. So when I insert a block, I go to insert, and any block that is living in my drawing, right, like this one, I click on insert. And wherever I'm at, I can click and insert it and add the attributes, and there it is. Okay, so you can add it into model space. But the proper way to use your title block is to insert the block into paper space. Okay, so I'm going to go to my layout. I'm going to make sure my layout is the right size to insert this title block on. So the first thing I'm going to check is Control P. Make sure this is 11 by 17 so that it will accept an 11 by 17 inch piece of paper, or title block on the piece of paper. Adobe Layout 1:1 looks good. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing I would in model space. I'm going to go up to Insert, Title Block, Portrait, and I can come down here. Oh, look how nice it is. Click, add the drawing name. And no, it won't. You can't snap to the margins. A lot of offices, though, they'll define their title block so that it goes in at 0.000. So you can type the insertion point is 000 and it goes in the right spot. And there it is. Right? I click on it and it's a block, right? So don't be confused with the idea that we have model space, we have paper space, right? In model space we draw, in paper space we print, right? We can still insert blocks and text and different things like that into paper space. Yep.
How do you edit an attribute? An attribute?
Like what kind of, well, okay, so I have a two-part answer to that, right? There is a way, and there is an attribute editor, right? I don't really think it works very well. I think it's a little bit finicky. So what you can do is you can go to Manage Attributes, click, and we can select our block that we want to edit the attribute in, click. I'm going to click on my title block, for example, and it shows me all of the different attributes that I've added, right? So if I want to change school name, SLCC, right, I can click on that one and hit edit, and I can change all of these different properties within that attribute. Okay, so let me do that. Let me show you where that's at again.
So you have to change it to a block first before you can edit.
Yeah. And even then, this is one of those things that I feel like is really finicky. It doesn't always update. And so I will try to edit attributes, and I will do it one time. And if it doesn't work, I explode the block and I delete the attribute and I recreate the block, essentially.
I'm kind of fidgeting with like the fonts because I'm having the same problem where it's too big, and I'm making sure I'm putting in the inches rather than
Okay.
the feet, and it's still like.
One thing that could be happening if your text is too large is I know we're going back and forth between the two, but it may be annotative, right? Your text might be annotative. So if you're having trouble with the height of your text, create a new text style. So go to annotate, click on this little flyout, and make sure not to check annotative for this one. So you can click on new, and maybe you call it attribute text, right? And hit OK. And then we want it maybe to be, you know, I don't know, whatever. And regular, and hit apply and close. And unless you're creating a dynamic block where it's essentially an annotative block, which we're not doing in this class, then you're not going to want the text to be annotative, right? So you want to take that association away so that you can just type in 4 inches and it doesn't scale the text. Because if you don't, the block will stay the same size, and if you have your model space set, you know, for annotative, it could vary it up and down. Try that out. Okay. Yep.
Question, how do you make it so certain values are constant? Is that the word?
Yep.
You just check constant.
Yeah, so when you are defining your attribute, you're going to check this constant value. And when you do that, you still have a tag that is a representation in your block, but then the value never changes from this default value. Yeah. Okay, so we have our title block. Looks wonderful, right? Now, how do we use it with drawings? Well, I'm just going to create MV, enter, make view. Now all of our viewports are just going to live inside of that title block, right? Click, click. I zoom in where I want to see. Click, click out. Select the viewport. I'm going to change my scale to, you know, whatever, 1/4 of an inch. Click, click, or sorry, escape. And there's my viewport, right? So essentially, we're creating these title blocks to sort of act like a boundary for our pages. And the title block contains information about, in our case, the assignment, right? So it has our name, the college, the class, what the drawing is, all that good stuff. Okay. All right, so I'm going to create a new layout here to kind of simulate when you start AutoCAD, right? And if I were to just create a new layout and I were to forget to check the page size, so I think to myself, I have my title block generated, I have this page I need to lay out, okay, but I forget to check the page size. I go to Insert, I want to put my title block, and it looks like this. The reason it looks like that is because I'm trying to put an 11 by 17 inch title block on a letter size piece of paper. Okay, so if something like this happens, it doesn't mean you've done something wrong. It's just that you've forgotten to size your page to fit your title block. Okay. Okay. So one final thing on this, you are going to have to generate 4 title blocks, right? Hello. Yep, go ahead. You're gonna have to generate 4 title blocks, right? So we have a portrait and we have a landscape. So I'm gonna copy this over. And really the only difference between the portrait and the landscape is one is rotated. So I'm gonna grab this, I'm gonna explode it, X, enter. All of my attributes are still there, all of the geometry is still there, right? RO, rotate. And I'm gonna reblock it. So I'm just going to go to right block, create a block. Oh, I want a W block, pick point, click, select objects, enter. Where do I want to save it? In my block library. But I want this, instead of 11 by 17 portrait, landscape. Save, okay. And now I have a landscape one. All right. So you are going to have to draw 2 title blocks, and I would say you could copy your attributes, except this title block is, you know, double the size of an 8.5 by 11, and so the text height won't be the right size for an 8.5 by 11. So you're going to have to generate, you know, 1 large title block, 1 smaller title block, and then you just rotate them and reblock them to create the secondary rotation. Okay. That makes sense so far?
Or is it just possible to just copy the block and then rotate it 90? Still
Well, if you just rotate the block, it's still that same block. So you could say, well, I only need one block. I'm going to insert it and then rotate it. You could do that, absolutely. I guess kind of the nice thing is that when you rotate it inside the block, it just saves you an extra step every time, I guess. But you could do that, yeah.
I missed one step wondering.
Yeah.
How do you insert the same block in paper space?
It's exactly the same as in model space. So if I wanted to put my title block in paper space, I just need to make sure that my page is the right size, right? And I'm going to go to Insert, find my block here. And if my block is not here because you W blocked it out, right? You go to More Options, Browse. You can go to your library here. Portrait, Open, OK, and click to insert it. It's exactly the same process as you would insert it in model space. Makes sense to everybody so far? Okay. All right. Yep.
So what if it doesn't actually fit the paper?
If it doesn't fit, you're going to have to edit the block. Yeah. So if this by accident were the wrong size, right? Like you use a different printer and that different printer has a larger margin, right? What you'd have to do is well, there's two things you could do, okay? You could say, well, I'm only going to use maybe this printer for this one drawing. So you could edit the block in place, right, within this drawing. So you could click on it, you could right click, edit block in place, okay. And you could, M for move it down or stretch it, right? And you would just have to alter it, okay? I'm just going to give you some advice. It's easier to make it right the first time, right? So just double check the size. But I could use stretch, and I could stretch it in and make it smaller, right? So that's what I could do. The other thing that I could do is I could open that block up through my block library, right? So this is within my block library, and that block library is kind of the master file, right? When I bring a block into a drawing, it's kind of an instance of that master file, right? So if I change that block within the drawing, it only changes it in the drawing. If I want to change it in the master instance, I would open it through the block library. So I could also open it here in the block library, right? I could change it here. I could stretch it and make it, however so much smaller so that then it will fit on my drawing page. Okay. Okay. All right. So your assignment, of course, like I said, I'm going to post a video about Hatch. I think it'll be helpful. So watch that video before Monday, and your assignment will be to finish the door window furniture assignment, where you're going to have to create some door blocks, some window blocks, some furniture blocks, and you're going to have to add attributes to them. And then you're going to finish the title blocks assignment, and then on Monday, and in fact, you know what? I'll post this so that you have it. I'll post it so you can look at it if you want to get ahead over the weekend, right? You're going to draw this office layout, okay? And then our next series, I think really next week is our last week of lecture. We'll talk about, I know, right? We're getting there. We'll talk about external references, and we'll talk about how to draw elevations, and then you'll just move into your final, essentially. And that will be like about 3 weeks of work. So, okay, that is all.